Alright, in this section of the course, we're going to build a really cool sword asset. So let's go ahead and get started. So I have a document and the size of it is 1080 by 1920 and the resolution is set to 150. Now I'm going to go ahead and add a new layer above this, and I'm going to use this layer to do my sketch on. So switching over to my paintbrush tool, I'm going to go ahead and just start sketching out what I want my sword to look like. So I'm going to start out with the butt of my sword. So I think I'm going to have it rectangular like so. And then I might add a little bit more detail like a bottom piece and a top piece. Something like that. And this might be a little bit too small, so I'm going to bring up the size just a little bit. And then I'm going to paint in the handle. And I'll paint in the guard. I think I'll have it curve up like this. Now remember, this doesn't have to be perfect. This is going to be your guide for creating the actual shapes that will make up your sword. So don't worry if this isn't perfect. You just want to get those basic shapes out. And then we'll add the blade in. So I think I just want the blade to be a straight blade. So something like so. Alright, cool. So now we have our sketch. Let's go ahead and move that to the center of our page. I'm also going to add a little bit of detail in there just so I know what we're going to be doing. So I think I'll have a line going straight up like so to divide the two planes on this sword blade. And then over here we're also going to have this wrapped in leather straps, like so. Great. Now let's go ahead and start building the shapes for the sword. So I'm going to add a new layer, and on this new layer I'm going to start with this part of the handle because that's going to be behind everything else. So I'm going to use my marquee tool and I'm going to make a rectangular selection like so. Then I'm going to go ahead and fill that in, and I'm going to fill it in with almost like a reddish violet. And I'm going to grab my color from somewhere about here, maybe a little bit darker, somewhere down there should be good. And I'll go ahead and fill that in. Next, I'm going to use my transform tool to first pull this down so it's at level. And then I'm going to turn on my warp transform. So I'll turn that on, and now I'll drag that to that corner. And I'm just going to get this into its correct shape. Then we can go ahead and hit enter. Next, let's work on the butt of our sword. So I'm going to add a new layer above this. And first, I'm going to create this shape right here. So just using my rectangular tool, I'll go ahead and create that. And then I'm going to fill that in with a dark gray. So I'm going to come to somewhere about here. And I'm going to come more towards my blues. So somewhere in there. Then I'll hit OK and fill that in. Now I'm going to add a little bit more shape to it. So using my transform tool, I'm going to go ahead and warp that. And I just want to bring this bottom area in just the tiniest bit. Same with this bottom area. And same on the top. This is just to give it a little bit more of an interesting shape than just a rectangle. Then we can go ahead and hit enter. Now these two are not lined up very well, so what I'll do is I'll grab this and I'll move it over until it clicks into the center, like so. Next, I'm going to add this piece that goes on top, so I'll add a new layer above this. And using my rectangular marquee tool, I'll make a selection like so. And then I'll fill that in with my gray. And then I'll use my grab and move tool to get that into the center. Now let's go ahead and move up to the guard. So I'll add a new layer. And I'm going to first add this piece of the guard. So I'll fill that in with gray. And then I'll make sure that that's centered. So pretty sure I'm good right there. Then using my lasso tool, I'm going to go ahead and click and basically trace out the shape that I've drawn here. And then I can go ahead and come down and reconnect that like so. Then I'm going to add a new layer, so this is on its own separate layer, and I'll fill that in with the dark gray. Next, I'm going to make a copy of this, but rather than copying the layer, what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy the image on the same layer. So I'm going to switch over to my grab and move tool, then holding down Alt on my keyboard, or Option if you're on a Mac, I'm going to go ahead and click and drag that, and that allows me to make a copy of that on the same layer. Next, I'm going to go ahead and select that and turn on my transform tool, and then I'm going to flip that horizontal. I'll hit enter, and now I can go ahead and drag that over and move it into place, just like so. Let's go ahead and turn off our background sketch to see how this looks so far. Great, everything's looking pretty symmetrical. Now we can go ahead and move on to the blade. So I'm going to add one new layer, and I'm going to add it underneath this handle right here. It's going to be the very bottom layer. And the handle is actually going to be very easy to create. All we have to do is use our lasso tool, and we're going to come straight up by holding down Shift. And once we get up here to this point, all we're going to do is we're just going to trace that out with our lasso tool. And remember to use really small lines to get that curve in there. And then we're just going to come straight down like so. And then we're going to fill that in with a blue. So I'm going to come into my blues. Probably want somewhere about here, and I'm in that range of my blues. Hit OK, and then I'm going to fill that in. Then I'm going to go ahead and grab that with my Alt key or Option key and drag a copy over. Then I'm going to select it, transform it, and flip it horizontal. Then I can go ahead and move that into place and get it all lined up. Great. Now let's go ahead and turn off our background sketch and make sure that blade is lined up. So it's not. So what we need to do is first we need to merge these two layers. So now that blade is one layer. And then we need to drag this over until it lines up correctly. So right there is perfect. All right. That brings us to the end of this lecture. So in this lecture, you learned how to draw your sword, and then you learned how to lay out the colors and the shape for it. Remember that you want to make everything on separate layers, because when we go in there, we're going to be painting on clipping layer masks. And so we want to be able to paint individually on each part of the sword. Thanks for watching this lecture, and I look forward to seeing you in the next